Hi, everybody. So you got to see some bloopers. This is Anna Sothen with the In Crowd, and I am so excited. So excited. I love all my people, but you know what? How do I put this? And it's not going to sound arrogant. I surround myself. Did you hear Mike? I don't know if y'all heard that, but Mike, you're one of them. So like, don't squawk over there. I surround myself with really good people. But I'm very intentional about who comes into my space. So I feel like really good people sense that, and it just, so well, tell people who you are first.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erika Baez-Grimes, and I'm good friends with Anna Sothen here. And I am an M&A advisor, business broker with Transworld Business Advisors. Excited to be here.
Yes. So M&A stands for mergers and acquisitions, which I didn't know how to spell that earlier. I was like, wait, what letter am I missing? But you and I met at a networking event at Connect Local, right? And it was the new pickleball place out in Regency Mall.
Yes.
But you were walking by and I was like, oh, I need to talk to her. Like, I don't know what it was, but I felt drawn to chat with you.
Likewise.
And we chatted for like a good 15-20 minutes, just getting to know one another. And then I have to tell you, like, I lost your business card. I now have an app that I can scan things into, but I lost your business card. So I legit went stalking you. I can't find you. I was like, no.
I got to find
this not only to, see if there's, opportunities for us to partner together, but you're just an amazing human being. And I've learned that like in the very short time that we've known each other.
That's mutual.
Yeah. Like what an amazing human being you are. So let's talk about mergers and acquisitions. Let's talk about what you do, because Mike sort of just stole my entire show right before we started, but there's not a lot of women who do what you do. Right. So how did you get into it? Like what drew you to that industry?
Well, I come from a family of small business owners. Okay. So I've worked in that B2B space for a really, really long time. And my Transworld Business Advisors office recruited me on LinkedIn. And, I met with Rupesh, who's our president. And immediately I felt like he's someone that I needed to know. I just needed to have this smart individual in my life. Kind of like when you're drawn to somebody and you're like, there's something here. So I joined Transworld about 6 years ago and, never looked back. I love Rupesh. I love our team. He's taught me so much. And I feel like, my old traditional values coming from a family of, just entrepreneurs, hard workers kind of brought me here. So
that's awesome. So Transworld is a big organization, right? It's not like and not that there's anything wrong, because we're like a mom and pop or a small business, if you will, but it's a huge organization. So tell us a little bit about Transworld itself.
Yeah, so huge franchise. We are the largest business brokerage in the entire world. So we're the ones. That's it. That's all I could say. We've been around for 40 plus years. Transworld is owned by a bigger umbrella of other brands. But they know this lane really, really well, like that Main Street business, lower middle market company. They know what they're doing, and they've been around for 40 years for a reason. So yeah,
that's amazing. So like, who would come to you? Like who's your, I guess, ideal client, for lack of a better word?
So ideal client for me would be someone who has an established company, let's say, been in business 20, 30 years. And this is what we're seeing now. So I'm kind of giving you like real life 411 here. What we're seeing is, let's say mom and dad build this great company, whether it's an HVAC or commercial painting, construction. They send their kids off to these great schools and great colleges, and their kids don't want to be in HVAC and they don't want to be in services. And, but mom and dad are like, all right, what do we do? Do we sell the company? Like, how do we get our wealth out of this when our kids don't want to, move the ball forward? So my ideal client for me is someone who's been around for, a pretty long time. There's value in that company, and, their kids may or may not want to take over. And then they're looking for a business evaluation and trying to see what their business is worth. Okay. There's the exit opportunity. So
awesome. Yeah. So my husband and I have sort of had this conversation, and I shared this with you the other day when I got to go over to her house and try her shoes on. So that's how good of friends we became. But so we talked about this. And so my husband's thought was, well, somebody is only selling their business because it's not doing well. Like, that's the only reason you sell your business, which is completely erroneous. I love him, but however, whatever. But that's not the reason, right?
It's not the only reason, right? Yeah, so he's right. Some people sell because they're, they may know how to fix ACs, but they're not a good business person, right? And need someone to come in and really, hire Salesforce and things like that. They're just not good in business. So the business is declining, not so much because of the service, but because they're just not a good business person. We've seen that before. People want to retire, right? They want to retire. They want to, move to the Sunshine State. We see that all the time. You have couples where, let's say the wife has a strong business, the husband works for, corporate America, and he's being moved to Beijing for 6 years, or, they have to relocate to the West Coast. So sometimes location really matters. And then there's some unfortunate events where, a family member or someone is sick and they now have to take care of their own health, and they have to take care of, the health of, mom or dad or something like that. So they're kind of forced to say, this is too time intensive. I need to, step out. So there's so many different reasons why people sell. And sometimes companies aren't even thinking about selling, but then when we show them like how to take out the wealth, in the equation, it's another conversation. So, some people aren't considering, some people don't even know that there's a pathway forward. And, some people, go in with the end in mind. So we see it all.
So you're talking about exit strategies, right? And I've heard this, I go to networking events with people who are talking about small businesses. Small businesses go into business and they have no exit strategy.
Right.
They have no, it's, like, do you just wake up one day and be like, all right, I'm done. Like, we're just shutting our doors.
Right.
So do you help with that process? Like, with somebody who is, do you want to talk to them right when they're getting ready to sell? Or is this a conversation that you have with somebody like 4 or 5 years where they know, okay, I'm 60, at 65, I want to retire. So let me start talking to Erika now so that I can put those pieces in place and things into place so that I'm prepared and my company is strong? Or like, how does that?
That's a good question. So clearly a tenured business broker may be able to share some insight. Anna, here's what we're seeing right now. If you do these 2 things, or strengthen the revenue here, or figure out how to, decrease the cost of goods sold year by year, we can give you some insight. There are exit planning companies that actually specialize in taking you, let's say, at your 3 or 5 year mark and, designing an entire plan for, an exit in 10 years or 5 years. So we're not exit planners. We traditionally want to, meet you right before, when you're now exploring options, right? When you're like, well, we're having these conversations, we think it's time, we don't think it's time. What are we worth? That's when we really want to start talking. But any really good business broker is happy to look at, your financial information and say, all right, well, if you do this, this will likely, I can help you with the forecast or projection, but it's not what we do day to day.
Yeah. So it's not what I like to call your zone of genius. You obviously have very much a lot of experience that you can share, and so you can give insight, but that's not what you're hired to do.
Correct. Yeah. And like you said, like starting with the end in mind is super duper important. Just because you want to know if this is something you want to pass on to your kids, right? Or it's something where you're like, all right, I want to do this for the next 5 or 10 years. I feel like I can grow this thing, and then I want to jump and do something else. So we see a lot of like serial entrepreneurs that they start, they go fast, they get an evaluation, and they start something else, and that's okay too. But they have that vision already right in front of them, right?
Awesome.
So direction is more important than speed.
Gotcha. Okay. So how do people start that conversation with you? Like, do they just reach out and be like, hey, I need you to evaluate my company. We're looking to sell in the next year or so.
Yeah. So someone who's been in business for an extensive period of time is likely going to have that really, bold discussion. Hey, look, we want to sell now, maybe later. We're not really sure. 2 partners are fighting, or, something's going on. Yeah. Right.
The marriage has gone bad.
For sure.
Yeah.
We see that often, more so than not. But yeah, it's very direct. It's very, to the point, like, hey, we're looking to possibly sell in the next 3 months to 24 months. What does this look like for us? So we're happy to give some direction there. And sometimes it's us, I can go to you and say, Anna, have you thought about selling this thing? And we'll drop a seed in your mind. And then you're like, I don't even know, what to do. I've never had this conversation before. And, there's a process. So we'll share some data that we have in our office and, some experience. But yeah, it's sometimes it's a 2-way street. If I know I have a buyer looking for, let's say, a pizza shop, if I meet a pizza shop owner, I'm 1,000% going to say, have you thought about selling this thing? Because I may have someone, looking in your industry in this area, things like that. So
I love that. So what's the, I guess it's probably very individualized. You can't say, oh, every process is going to be a year or whatever the case may be, but what's the process that somebody can expect if they're like, okay, I'm getting ready to sell? is it something that could be done in like, I'm like thinking of like, hey, I'm going to buy a house.
Yeah.
I put a offer in and then it gets accepted. And then like 30 days later, we go to closing type of thing.
It can happen that fast,
Okay.
right? Normally
It seems like a head spin.
Yeah, but if the price is right,
Right.
and your financials are clean, I can't stress that enough.
Oh.
Like clean.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that
financials. And I'm not a CPA, I'm not your tax person, but like clean financials, your financials will tell the story of the business, right? And if there's, a dip in income or something like that, just explain it. Like have your story, like this happened here. This is why the revenue decreased in these moments, things like that. But the cleaner the books are, the quicker to sell. And it's more so like having the business priced properly. And, we talked about this before we went online. We're likely not going to take a listing if we feel like we are not here together with a price point, right? If you think your business is worth $50 million and, based on what we see and know it's worth $5 million, we're not a good fit for each other.
Right.
So there we go.
That's no different than when you go to sell your house, right? Like, oh, my house, this is my house. And it's worth, $1 million. And the real estate agent comes in and goes, no, it's worth $4 million. I mean, that's probably the opposite of what it is now. The market, but it's the same thing, right? Because I would assume business owners are so emotionally invested in our business. Like we think it's worth a lot more because what we think of is, yes, I've grown it to $5 million, but that $5 million took my blood, sweat, and tears and time away from my family and worrying and all the struggle and all of the success and all of those things. So we are going to put a much higher evaluation on it. So having somebody like you who's very knowledgeable and has that expertise and that data to be able to say, look, like I understand. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I know this is your baby, but it's not worth $5 million. It's worth $3 million or whatever the case may be. And you were sharing this earlier, which like the second that I met you, I knew that this was absolutely who you are. But you're one of those individuals, like you're not going to sugarcoat it.
I can't.
Right. I think, excuse me, I'll choke it up. I think you may be physically impossible. Like
I just can't.
Maybe physically
impossible. It doesn't help anyone.
It doesn't.
It doesn't help, right? So, I can 1000% validate the fact that you have a great business if you have a great business, right? And I can totally understand just the pain points and the goodwill, right? You want to put such a big price on goodwill, but I'm not going to do you any favors by saying, yes, Anna, we can go to market at your number and you're just going to sit on the shelf. And, our head of operations was talking about this yesterday in our meeting. It's like we put a listing on the shelf and when we go to the office, we walk by and wave to the listing And the only way to get it off the shelf is to be realistic and, give the customer the right price and a true price. So it doesn't serve anyone by sugarcoating. So I just can't do it.
Yeah, I love that. It's not in me. I can't do it. So let's talk about, and you and I have had conversations because I am probably one of those serial entrepreneurs and I am very much a fan of, and I don't know who I heard this, but millionaires or billionaires have 7 streams of income, right? So I'm always thinking like, what is it? What else could we do that will bring, income in? Because the more income I make, the more I can give back to my community, right? So if somebody's looking, like somebody like me, would they come to you? Is there somebody else that they go to? Tell them what the website is before I forget that too.
There's so many websites you all can, go in and look at different listings. You can go to bizbuysell.com. You can go to erikathebroker.com and that'll reroute you to our like trans world page where you can see active listings here in the DMV, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, some fall in and out of DC or Northern Virginia. But traditionally, you want to do your own research, right? Because, you can hire a company to go and search for you and pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars as a searcher. But you want to kind of narrow it down. And what we see the big private equity groups do, and we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but traditionally they'll have what they call platform companies, which are like their main businesses. And then they find companies that are great add-ons, right? So for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say a moving company has a, robust operation and then wants to offer organizing services to their clients, right? So that may be an add-on business that they're looking at purchasing that really helps and enhances the moving business. They're not going to go into aviation or they're not going to go into a pizza shop. They're looking, for something to really enhance.
Yeah, that are synchronistic.
Exactly. Right. So that's what I would suggest. If you already have a business or you're a serial entrepreneur, you love to start things, just kind of follow the path that you're already on. If you have something that's working, figure out how to, add on a service, or if not, completely get out and do something else.
Okay.
So yeah.
You can either do one or the other, but I like the idea of, there was somebody that I just met recently who had an was it an HVAC company, and then he bought something. He might have just purchased another HVAC company, like their book of business or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about. So we talked about how to find the businesses, right? But so if somebody's coming to you, what are you going to ask of them? Or like, if I were to come to you and say, "Hey, Erika, I want to buy a business," and then we need to talk about franchises too, because we mentioned that a little bit earlier. I want to buy a business. What are you going to ask of me? Like, what are the things that I can do to sort of prepare before I come to that meeting?
I'm going to ask you what you love.
Okay.
Right. So traditionally, I don't work with buyers, right? Because I'm not a searcher. I'm usually on the sell side. But if you come to me and you say, "Hey, Erika, look, I'm looking for a company that may be an extension of my own business," I'm going to ask you what you love. Like,
Okay.
That's really important for me. What do you want to do on a day-to-day? Like, if you close your eyes, let's manifest it. Like, what do you look like, right? Who do you want to show up to the world every single day? And the conversation will kind of, just grow from there, for lack of a better word. But, what do you have background in doing? What do you enjoy doing? What do you not want to do at all? Just knowing what's just like non-negotiable. Like, I wouldn't want to work in a food plant or something like that, just because I see something and I just may not agree with it, or I may get to, whatever. So you just have to know where you want to land.
Yeah.
And I'll give you this 20-second story. I remember I had a client one day who was looking at a flower shop, and I told him, "Well, the numbers look great, but like, have you ever even ran a retail business?" Walk me through that. He was in tech, and he's still in tech. And I said, "Well, why don't you spend the day at the flower shop?" Right. And he went and spent the day at the flower shop. The delivery guy called out, and he ended up having to do some deliveries, and he's like getting poked with like rose stud buds and stuff like that. And he's like, "I hated today." And I'm like, "I'm so glad that you actually went and spend the day in that type of business, so like what you really don't want to do." Because even though the numbers may look good, you may not want to be a delivery guy if you have to replace someone, because as business owners, I'm sure you answer your own calls sometimes, so many things. So yeah, just really knowing what you want to do from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis is important.
Yeah. So what about financials? Because those are super important.
Oh yeah. So,
We'll
we'll talk about like how much money you have, ready to invest right now. We'll also talk about like lending, right? And I'm sure you have great banking partnerships. You text me, "Hey, do you need this? You need that? You need a, commercial broker or whatever." So just really figuring out, getting pre-qualified, right? I have a lot of buyers that will come in that they say, "Hey, look, I have a pre-qual letter from the SBA." Basically, someone in another bank has looked at their own personal financials, and just like residential real estate, right? You go to your mortgage company and say, "Hey, how much can I afford? What can I buy?" You go and get pre-qualified, and you know exactly what you can shop for, because they'll give you some guideline. We're not in like that finance business or anything like that. So check with your local bank, or call Anna. She has great resources.
Nice. But if they don't have somebody, do you guys have resources that you could refer them to as well?
We do. So just really depends on what you're looking for. We have some banks that may want to lend in, real estate focused industries. Some bank may not, I want to lend in those industries. So, depending on what you're looking for, whether it's retail or government contracting or whatever that case may be, we can normally match you with a good banking partner to get you pre-qualified.
That's awesome. So let's talk about, because I brought this up earlier, you don't do a lot of franchises. It's very minimal if you do pick them up. Am I correct?
Yeah. So it's a small part of our business. We will list a franchise. We do a great job. I was a part of a franchise sale a couple of years ago, College Hunks. We sell, College Hunks. That one was out of Florida. So we work really, really well with franchises. One of our top business brokers in our office is a partner in a franchise of his own. Sometimes we'll see deals that come our way and the deals look really, really good, and we want to, jump in deals sometimes. And
it's like a real estate agent who goes and looks at a house and they're like, "Exactly, I want to buy that house because I want it." Right?
Yeah, big time. So we definitely work with, franchises. We don't work with everyone, again, because we want to make sure that the marriage is there and it just makes sense. I have a franchise ice cream shop for sale in Michigan. So
Oh,
yeah.
Ice cream in Michigan seems like an oxymoron.
It's very
just too
seasonal.
cold.
It's very seasonal,
Right.
but then, you know, when it's summer and the temperature is good, everyone is outside and everybody wants to, you know, be in that like mingly world. So it actually works really, really nice. Their numbers are great. We're under contract.
That's amazing. Me, I'm like, think Michigan cold ice cream.
Yeah.
Not, and I do know that they obviously have
some days. Yeah.
Some, all two of them. But so, okay, so let's talk about, I guess, like I know we talked about it a little bit, but like, what does that process look like? Like what, as a business owner, if I were to come to you, is it basically handing over my baby and being like, don't forget to change the diapers and feed them? Like, you got it, right?
For
like,
an exit?
high five?
Yeah.
Or is the business owner involved in it as well? Because I can only imagine it's no different than selling your house. Like, no, I don't want you to paint my walls blue. Like, well, they're not your walls anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So how does that process? Do they have to like back up and be like, all right, you got it?
And you have all the good questions. You have all the good questions today. So traditionally, you know, like I said before, the marriage has to work, right?
Right.
So I'm going to ask my seller, how involved do you want to be in this process, right? I have, you know, the current seller right now who wants to know who is inquiring about their business that's in the state of Virginia.
Okay.
So he wants to know if it's a competitor. He wants to, so that's a very involved, you know, seller, right?
Okay.
Because he doesn't, you know, he may not want to sell to a competitor. He may want to look at other options outside of his territory. So, you know, it really all depends on how involved you want to be. There is a process and there is a level of trust, right? So we decide we're going to list a business. You and I have already had numerous conversations about how this is going to go, you know, what type of buyer you're looking for. And we do a really good job of getting, you know, potential buyer and seller together quickly, right?
Okay.
Like you're going to interview the person that's probably buying your business because you care about those employees and you want to make sure that it's a match yourself, right? Yeah. We don't just go and sell your business and you have no idea who's taking over versus in residential real estate, you have no idea who that buyer is or anything like that.
Unless you stalk them.
Yeah, right. And on this end, it's not this way. It's not this way. There is communication.
Okay.
A lot of the times the buyer will ask the seller to stay on for, 4 weeks or even as a consultant to the business because he's done a great job for the last 20 or 30 years. So yeah, it can get really friendly from time to time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
It is good.
So let's talk a little bit about that because you mentioned it. So like what happens if they have a buyer? Can the seller say, no, I don't want to sell to them for whatever reason? They're too short, they're too tall, they're too whatever. Like they can say no?
They can. So from a contractual standpoint, if you decide that you are going to sell your business and a brokerage, whether it's, Transworld or any other brokerage, says, all right, I'm willing to take you on as a listing. I'm willing to pay for marketing. I'm willing to, take these calls, find you a buyer. And we bring you a buyer who's ready, willing, and able, is financially able to take the business on. And you say, no, there may be a legal ramification for not selling because the broker did their job. Now, you as the owner, you are not forced to sell, but you may be forced to, maybe. Yeah. So again,
whatever it looks like, whatever the contract says.
But the answer to your question is no. If you decide, you know what, I want to take this off the market, I'm not ready. I think fine. And especially if we don't have anything, going on.
Right.
There is a path to that as well. So, yeah.
So make sure, the moral of that story is make sure that if you are ready to sell, you are ready to sell.
Correct.
Like you're ready to exit, like you're done. So there's I'm dipping but that's going to come in with, like you said, like the conversation that you have with the business broker or the business owner initially, like I'm sure over the 6 years that you've been doing this, that you could probably get an inkling of like somebody who's just like, maybe
kicking tires.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not ready yet. Great. Call me when you're ready. Like we'll stay in touch. I'll, send you an email every month or so. Hey, Anna, just checking in. Because we want you to be happy at the end of this too, right? I don't want you to have seller's remorse. Like, oh my God, I sold my company. I wasn't ready to sell my company. Yeah. So it's really a two-way street for sure.
Yeah. I think of buyer's remorse. This is why I buy things, and I just took the tags off this and I bought it like 3 months ago. My husband's like, are you going to return that? And I'm like, I haven't decided yet. But I can see that. Again, going back to this is my baby. I built it from the ground up, or I took it from somebody and then built it and created this huge, amazing company. And I
Right.
have these people that are my employees and I care about them.
Yeah,
And now I'm handing it over to some stranger.
that's right.
Want to go back to the question where you mentioned it earlier. Sometimes competitors are, is this sort of like when somebody puts a house on the market and they have an open house and then the
The
neighbor
neighbors
goes
come
in?
by. Yeah, right.
Do a lot of competitors buy their, I'm gonna say competitors, like 15,000 times now. Do they go in and buy other businesses?
They do. And, a lot of competitors want to grow through acquisition, right?
Okay.
So, for them, let's say you're 15 or 20-mile radius, or you may be an hour away, and I want to, jump into that territory. I'm still a competitor because I work in your backyard, but now I really have dominance in the area.
Yeah.
So that definitely happens.
Okay.
It's not very often that someone really cares about, who is ringing the phone, because we vet our buyers as well, right?
Okay.
So let's say I'm listing your business for sale, and Joe Schmo calls and says, hey, I want some information. First of all, they have to sign an NDA. Then we have to do a buyer profile on them. We have to make sure that you're financially capable,
Yeah.
to purchase this company. And then, we'll talk to you. Like, what's your background? Tell me. We're not just going to start sharing information about our sellers,
Okay.
for the sake of sharing information. Everything is really discreet. Nobody knows the name of your business. Nobody knows anything going on until, it's time to share that data after we've vetted you as the buyer, and, you've signed some NDAs and things like that. Then at that point, we'll say, all right, well, this is what we have. Yeah. We'll give you some like recasted financials, high level overview of how the business has performed. And then, we can, visit the location after hours. Obviously, nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't walk in from 9 to 5 and be like,
hey, we're selling.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I'm here to check it out.
Right. Right. So
don't do that. Don't do that.
No.
If you're thinking about don't do that.
Yeah.
So, oh Lord, I just had something and it just flew out of my head. Oh, yeah. So going back to your website, so I have gone to Transworld, and you're right. Like it just like it'll say HVAC company, and then it'll say the location. It'll show and just remind me of the things that I'm missing.
high level overview, like the price point the
Right.
business is selling for, their top line revenue, their total sales, and then what the seller's earning, or the net profit of the business. So very general information. Once you click into it, the description will tell you, hey, they've been around for 20 years, they service this vicinity, normally work in these industries. So it's very high level overview. Again, we don't want to spook employees or anything like that. We want the business to run as usual, so everything stays intact.
Yeah. And it also shows, because some of them are, if there is I don't know if it's called a down payment. Is that what it's called? That
Yeah.
You have to.
Yes. So that's a great question. So if you look at our listings, it'll say like total down payment. If let's say the listing is for $1 million and it says down payment $1 million, that normally means that the seller is not willing to seller finance the note. So they're saying, hey, we are not going to hold a note for you for 3 years or 12 months or 24 months. Your cash or your bank have to come up with all the money. Now, if you see something where it says, the listing is $100,000 listing and it says down payment 50 grand, that normally means that the seller is willing to seller finance a note for you for a period of time. So, you come up with 50 grand, whether it's 25 out of your pocket, 25 out of the bank, and then the seller will say, you know what, I'll hold a note for you for 2 years or 3 years.
Okay.
I trust you. I trust the business.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the benefit of doing that?
Well, a lot of the times
my thought process is like, I'd rather go to the bank and get it all in one place versus owing to different people.
Yeah. Sometimes the bank is not willing to give you all the money that's necessary, right? So the bank may look at it and say, well, this is a great business and we will accept 600,000 of this $1 million risk. You have to find the other 400,000 to get to the million, right? So at that point, you're asking the seller to finance a note. You're, asking mom and dad for $100,000. You're trying to figure it out, whether it's your own capital or friends, family, or whatever the case may be. So it's nice that sellers can get creative and offer some seller financing on some deals. It's not all the time, but it does happen.
Okay, I was going to ask, does it happen pretty often?
Yeah.
Like a seller, I would hope when they're selling their business that they're going to pull out some equity, right? They're not going to walk away and be like, all right, I just spent the last 30 years.
Right.
Here you go. So they may be able to. So it's interesting that there could be some seller financing.
Seller financing. Yeah.
I like that.
It's a great way. It's a great way to, be able to fund your deal in full. A lot of the times the seller does believe in the business and the future of the business. They know the business is going to be profitable. It's been profitable. So, it's a no-brainer, especially if they want to get to a certain number, they want to get creative.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How often do sellers remain involved in the business?
So most sellers will stay for 4 to 6 week period in a transition, right? So understanding what the contracts look like, the day-to-day, things like that. I would say maybe 10% of the time they'll stay on as a consultant.
Okay.
If everything goes well at the closing table, they're friends, and someone will pick up the phone and say, hey, what about this? Or when you bid for this contract, how'd it go? And a lot of the sellers want to be a part. They may want to stay on as a consultant for a period of time. In government contracting, if you have to have, let's say, top secret security clearance or, something special to run that business or to, execute that contract, sometimes the seller will have to stay on for a period of time because they have that,
They
title.
have
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the contracts, because that's like, you and I had this conversation the other day, and I think you said 7 years, which is fine. But so if a business is coming up, so I'm thinking of contracts, government contracts or whatever, yes, you have an HVAC business for commercial and all of your contracts are getting ready to come up in 7 years. So, and you're at year 6.5, right? I could buy the business that right now today is making $10 million, right. But then 6 months, all of those contracts go away. It went from $10 million to negative $10 million.
That's right.
That's a big elephant to swallow.
So it's normally good to renew those contracts, solidify those relationships. Obviously, the longer you have left on the contract, the more people are willing to pay, that multiple, right? So they'll say, all right, well, I'll give you 3 times what you're making now, because if you have a 10-year contract, I know that I'm going to be able to make this, X. So that's really, really important. Just understanding the, remaining time in the contract. And is there a link to why you got the contract, right? Did you get the contract because you're on a good old buddy system or, things like that? Why? Is this just like a handshake because I really like you and I've done business with you for 30 years? So some of those things are really important, because if you go away, does the contract not renew because
Absolutely. Yeah. Because people do business with people they like, know, and trust. And then all of a sudden there's this brand new person. And so yes, the seller vetted the person, you guys vetted the person, but then Joe Schmo over here at, government building A is I don't like that dude. I don't want to do business with him. And all of a sudden, their $5 million contract is, null and void.
Right.
So that's super interesting. Yeah. All of these moving pieces.
There's so many.
So tell somebody who is thinking, what is the one thing, if I'm thinking about, we're going to do a 2-part question. If I'm thinking about selling my business, what's the one piece of advice you can give them?
Make sure your financials are clean.
Yeah, we talked about
it's
essential that we come back to that, because
I can't stress that
messy financials. And I'll give you an example. So there was a friend of mine who had a business. I won't mention the business, and they were looking to sell it. And so my husband, who's in finance, he's in banking, right? So the numbers are his jam.
Yeah.
He was like, I want to see the financials. And so when they gave us the financials, he was like, it doesn't make sense. You say that your business is worth, we'll just say $10,000 or whatever. But what they had coming in was $2,000. And he's like, well, how do you get from 10,000, or from 2,000 to 10,000? Where's the, and they're like, oh, we have cash and we have this. And they're like, so are you not reporting the cash?
Right.
Right. Because we can't buy, nobody should buy a business off of hypotheticals.
Right.
You may get cash, but you may not.
Yeah, it's so true. We see that all the time. And there are some cash heavy businesses that, let's say a restaurant, right?
Okay.
If I'm in the restaurant business and I look at someone's financials, I may be able to tell, okay, there may be something missing here, or you may understand how to look at those books and really find the value because you're already a restaurant owner. You already know how that goes. But for me, my job is to really tell a story based on what you've told Uncle Sam and what you're reporting. So if you're saying your business is worth $10 million and you're, reporting that you're making 30 grand a year in net profit,
the math isn't mathing.
The math isn't mathing, right? And it has to math, right? Because it has to just make sense.
Absolutely.
It has to make sense. Yeah. If not, then you just go find another broker who just wants a listing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there's probably, just like with any other industry, there's people who will do that, who will tell you whatever it is that you want to hear in order to get the listing.
Sure.
So let's talk about the buyer side of it. What's the one thing that you would tell? And it's just going to be a repeat of what you already said, but
yeah, just be ready. Like, talk to your bank and say, I want to buy a business. Like, how can I get pre-qualified to purchase a business?
Yeah.
And if you go on Biz by Sell or even our Trans World listings, a lot of the listings online, we will advertise as like SBA pre-qualified, meaning,
okay.
We've already done some of that work for you. We send it to an SBA lender. The SBA has looked at the financials for the business and said, hey, we're willing to lend, $1 million on this type of company.
Gotcha.
So if you go around with your letter, and there's other companies that'll tell you, write a resume, give me a background of who you are and just like high level overview. The more information you have, the better it is. Not only for me as a business broker, because you want to come in and learn about my client, right? So I have to verify you are who you say you are and things like that. So just be forthcoming, talk to your bank, be realistic, and then have some patience.
Patience is a virtue. I admire in other people. I'm learning to be more patient, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, thank you. Like this was so much good information.
I'm so glad.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So tell people how they can reach you.
Okay, so on Instagram, you can find me at Erika_the broker, Erika the broker, Erika the biz broker. I have both of those domains. So you can go to erikathebroker.com. That'll reroute you to the Trans World listings page. It's just easier to say Erika the broker, whatever. You can find me there. And that's it. If you Google, Erika Baez Powerhouse, it's a nickname that I got when I was little. You can always find how to find me on social media. Erika Baez Powerhouse Grimes. So again, Anna, thank you so much for having me. It's important for people to know some of this information.
Because I
don't know.
Yeah, they don't know. And, I think knowledge is power. And the more information we can share about businesses, not only, how they're growing, but like what happens at the end, right? Like where do you go from there? Or if you're a serial entrepreneur and want to do more, like there's so many things that are available that nobody knows about because unless you're having the conversation, nobody knows.
That's right.
So awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
If you can't find her, just reach out to me. I will text her and I'll go put her shoes on again and then say, hey, by the way, so-and-so wants to talk to you. So thank you guys for being here.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Anna.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, make sure that you tune in next week for my next guest. And as always, stay fluid, my friends. I'm always cheering for you. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.